Hello, hope everybody is doing well. This is Mr. Grizzoulis again, and just wanted to talk about the key to the Harrison Bergeron dystopian elements. You guys filled out a couple of Google forms that asked some of these questions. I just want to take some time and go through all the different criteria for dystopian literature, dystopian control, and dystopian protagonist. We're going to be seeing these things coming up again and again as we read Fahrenheit 451. So just want to make sure that you have a good solid base of understanding these things with Harrison Bergeron. That way you'll be able to identify them in Fahrenheit. So let's start off with the characteristics of the dystopian society. So the first one is propaganda is used to control the citizens of society. We see that a couple of times in Harrison Bergeron. We see the news bulletin, which is enforcing all the handicaps and talking about how great they are. And we also see the TV show with the ballerinas. It's showing the citizens with handicaps. That is a form of propaganda because it's normalizing these handicaps and it's showing people how this is the way things are supposed to be. And it's that false information that they're sending out through the media. Next, we have information, independent thought, and freedom are restricted. So, of course, George's thoughts are all prevented by those noises that come through the transmitter. Everybody has all the handicaps that takes away their freedoms, and anybody who is a free thinker, like Harrison, he's shot. So all of those independent thoughts, freedoms, information, all of that is restricted. Okay, then we have the figurehead or concept is worshipped by the citizens of the society. So we, of course, have Diana Moon Glampers. Love that name, by the way. She is the U.S. Handicapper General, so she's in charge of the whole thing. We also have the HG men, and the big thing that is worshipped as well is the concept of equality itself. People are just so obsessed with being equal that they forget about the rest of their freedoms and rights. Okay, citizens are perceived to be under constant surveillance. We learn at the very beginning that everything is kept equal by the unceasing vigilance of the U.S. Handicapper General. We learn that there's a punishment for messing with the handicaps. George is afraid that he'll be caught if he takes the birdshot out of his bag. And then we also just kind of get the general sense that these HG men are lurking around to enforce the rules. So there's that constant surveillance. The fear of the outside world. In this case, the outside world would be anything that's competitive. So they completely fear competitive society. On the news report, they say an unhandicapped person is extremely dangerous, and there's jail or death for those that take off their handicaps. And George makes a reference to the Dark Ages, which we'll talk a little bit more about soon. We see the citizens living in a dehumanized state. So their handicaps take away their feelings. Hazel watches her son get killed, and then like 10 seconds later, she doesn't even know why she's crying. She completely forgets. So there's no freedom, no free thoughts. People just don't even have normal human emotions, not for more than a second or two anyway. The natural world is banished and distrusted. So in this case, the natural world would be kind of a normal world where people don't wear handicaps. So when George is talking about that, he references the Dark Ages. So he says, like, if he were to take off his handicaps, then everybody else would. And before you know it, we'd all be back in the Dark Ages. So that shows that he fears that outside world, the natural world. These two criteria, the natural world is banished and distrusted, and then the fear of the outside world, those will often go together. Okay, citizens conform to uniform expectations. Individuality and dissent are bad. Yeah, definitely. Everyone is made completely equal because of the handicaps. There's a punishment if anybody dissents. No competition is allowed, no freedom or free thinking. So anytime somebody is an individual like Harrison, he gets killed. And everybody has to conform to the same thing. And then the society is an illusion of a perfect utopian world. They believe that it's great. I mean, look at the way George and Hazel talk. They say that, this is the way things are supposed to be. If people took off their handicaps, they'd be in the Dark Ages again. So they believe that it's a great thing that everyone is finally equal. So they think everything is perfect because everyone is equal, but we know that that's not true, that it's just an illusion. All right, moving on to those dystopian controls. So we don't really see corporate control in the story at all. We don't know about any large corporations, so that one, not there. Next is bureaucratic control. This is probably the biggest one. So The society is controlled by the mindless bureaucracy, red tape, regulations, incompetent government officials. We get the U.S. Handicapper General, so that is a member of the government. We learn from the first sentence or two that it's the 211th, 212th, and 213th Amendments to regulate equality. If this government was functioning well, they probably wouldn't need over 200 amendments to make things work. The transmitters are supplied by the government. The signals that they send out to scramble people's thoughts are sent by the government. And then Diana Moon Glampers is that handicapper general. So all of those things help show us that this society is under bureaucratic control. We also have a lot of philosophical or religious control. We don't see religion exactly, but we do see the philosophy of equality. That idea of equality is worshipped above everything else. Everything is controlled by handicaps in order to keep that idea of equality intact. And then we have the Dynamo Glampers and HG men enforce the laws. So that's where we see like the society is often enforced through that dictatorship or theocratic government. It's possible you might have said technological control. You could maybe make an argument for the transmitters being a form of technology that's used to control the citizens. But one thing to remember is that it's the government that is supplying those, and it's the government that's sending out all of the signals. So usually under technological control, humans are less involved. It's like the technology itself is taking over, or the humans just have this nonstop reliance on technology. So it's a little bit different there. You could possibly make an argument for it, but I think bureaucratic or philosophical would be the better choices for this story. Okay, and then finally, our dystopian protagonist. So hopefully you realize that the dystopian protagonist is Harrison Bergeron. It's not George or Hazel. They're not the protagonists of the story. It's Harrison that actually has the story arc. So the dystopian protagonist often feels trapped and is struggling to escape. We see that quite literally, right? They say nobody had ever borne more handicaps. Scrap metal was hung all over him. He had just escaped from jail. He was like a walking junkyard, and he carried 300 pounds. So with all of the ways that the government has tried to keep him trapped and keep him weighed down with all these handicaps, he literally feels trapped, and he has to break through and escape all of these things that are keeping him trapped. So next, he questions the existing social and political systems. Right? That's kind of the whole story. Is he removes his handicaps, he removes the handicaps of others. It's because he doesn't think things are right. He knows something is wrong, and he knows that removing the handicaps is a way to possibly make things better. He believes or feels that something is terribly wrong with the society in which he lives. He wants to overthrow the government and become the emperor. You don't want to overthrow your government if you're happy with it. So that definitely shows that he believes something is terribly wrong. And finally, he helps the audience recognize the negative aspects of the dystopian world through his perspective. So through Harrison, we see how bad it can get if people were made and forced to be completely equal. Some of his quotes there: "Now watch me become what I can become. Play your best and I'll make you barons and dukes." We see at the end there, not only were the laws of the land abandoned, and that's when Harrison and the ballerina literally defy gravity and float above the stage in this beautiful moment, which shows the audience that he enforcing these handicaps, it's really wrong, and it's limiting how incredible people can be without them. All right, so if you struggle at all with that Google form, hopefully this helped. We will also post the link to this key so you can go back and reference it. And I hope this was a helpful little explanation. All right, hope everybody is doing well. Have a great day.